DFS podcast for today's early slate, kicking off at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, that is right. Early slate podcast. That means late main slate live stream, tipping off at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. I am James Grande, joined once again by Colby Conway. Colby, double duties today, two slates, better than one. That's what they tell you until you look at the player pool on this slate, and it is really not the best.
It is not the best. I agree. There's some spots you want to get excited about, and the next thing you know, I'm sitting here going, yeah, actually, there's a lot of plays that I like in this one. And it's like, oh, well, Colby, who do you like? Well, like John Gray, Luis Robert, Shohei Ohtani, Wander Franco, Randy Rosarina. Cool, you have 4 more spots and negative $700. So now what's the move? This slate is going to be you got to find the value and hitting on the value.
Yeah, definitely have to find the value. And especially at pitcher, things are going to dry up mighty fast. And that's what we're going to help you do. So, again, 5-game slate. This is the early look. Not entirely sure if FanDuel has this same slate out. But when we look at Vegas, I'm trying to look to see if we have anything out for Thursday slate. What are we doing in decimal places? Why are we opening up our betting lines in decimal places? If I'm looking at a site, I want to see my money line. Okay. I see Shane Bieber and the Cleveland Guardians as pretty big favorites. Patrick Sandoval and the Los Angeles Angels as pretty big favorites. Texas has opened up minus 240 against the Tigers. Do you see anything notable on the over-under side of things, Colby?
No, nothing really right now. I mean, I would like to think that Angels and White Sox is going to go over that mark just because when we start talking about some Angels left-handed bats, and again, I'm a man of the BVP people. Not many people want to stand up here for them, but I will. There are some notable BVP numbers in that lineup. So I would like to think that game is going to go over. And I mean, I really like one of the offenses in that Guardians-Royals game, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're kind of the leading the charge and trying to push that to the over as well.
All right, well, let's get into it because there is a couple good pitchers to target in that game. One to target and one to target, and the one to target using it could be Shane Bieber. He is the second highest priced pitcher on the day. There's only 2 pitchers over 9K. It's Shane Bieber, not related to Justin, and John Gray, not related to Sonny, as I think. Of the 2 guys of price 10K or higher, do you have a lean, either Gray or Bieber?
100% John Gray.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm terrified of Bieber. I mean, looking at his numbers, recent starts, we got 4 or more earned runs in 3 of his last 5. I mean, he's, some tougher offenses in there, and we can't even bank on his strikeouts. It's not even like I can sit here and go, maybe he's going to let up 3 or 4 earned runs to the Royals if all goes wrong. But man, I know I got 7 strikeouts in my back pocket.
Right.
I don't even know if I can say it with 4.
Yeah, it's been brutal.
It's been bad, and John Gray's in a very good match. I think he's far and away. Like, I don't want to exaggerate to a point where it's very much hyperbole. But in a small slate like this with a lack of proven aces, I mean, where is Gray's ownership going to be? Like in cash games, like 85%, 90%? Like,
yeah, it's
insane. Or in your words, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, in my words, it's going to be crazy for sure. The only saving grace for Bieber, I would say here, is when you look at the Kansas City lineup, where Bieber has specifically struggled this year has been against lefties, and Kansas City, doesn't have any. It's pretty crazy. They have Nick Prado, MJ Melendez. They have Drew Waters, who's been subpar since coming off the injured list. But their best lefty, Vinny Pasquantino, he's out for the year. Michael Massey's out. I know they got Matt Beattie back and decided to hit him third upon returning, which is insane on Wednesday. But I will back Bieber a little bit here just because the lack of lefties Kansas City has. Anyone else, what else interest you? We'll just put pitcher as a big conglomerate, not top plays, not value. Like, what else is at all interesting to you at this position?
I mean, we talked about White Sox being bad against lefties, so you could try to kick the tires on a Patrick Sandoval type. You're not gonna feel good about doing it, and if the walks get him, we're in trouble. In the
Yeah.
outside of that 8 and that 6, not necessarily the most ideal. And you would have liked to see a little bit more against Colorado. I mean, I think that game was in Coors, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in Coors. Yep.
But I mean, even in Coors, just 3 strikeouts across 5 innings, strike out 3 of the 15 batters you recorded out. You would have liked to see a
Right.
little bit more. So I think value could go Sandoval just because the White Sox have no pulse against left-handed pitching. It's just you're not going to feel good about doing it. This is one where you put him in your lineup, and whatever you do, do not watch the game
Dude.
until you go to Otani's out. Then watch the game. But that
Yes.
Sandoval's on the
Yes.
mound, you turn it off, go to a different channel.
I don't disagree. Another guy, what the heck happened with the strikeouts? Like, this was a late round target in a lot of seasonal spots where you were kind of banking on strikeouts, and they've kind of just fallen by the wayside. So I don't hate Patrick Sandoval here. I also don't hate targeting him, which we might get into in a little bit. My one value that I honestly kind of went to was James Caprillion. And you and I have talked about this a lot this week. I mean, on 3 straight shows, we've now talked about how bad the Yankees offense has been. 4 or 5 straight shows, we've talked about how bad the Yankees offense has been. And it's not like it's showed up in any type of way of late. Caprillion, since being recalled, has been better ish. Especially the strikeouts, at least in the last couple starts, 8 and 6, his last 2 starts against Toronto and Philly. And like, he hasn't had the easiest matchups over the last month or so. Toronto, Philly, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, 4 of those offenses you expect to see playing in September and October. One of them is Tampa Bay, and the other one's Tampa Bay, right? So like, I'm just kidding. The other one's Pittsburgh. But like, he has been better. I mean, double digit fantasy points in 4 of 5 too, and so $6,000 against a just dysfunctional Yankees offense in a massive ballpark, in a ballpark that you know he can benefit from. So I do have mild interest in James Caprillion. Want to talk revenge? He was former first round pick of the Yankees that he had a couple Tommy Johns and they gave up on another member of the Frankie Montas deal. So, you know, I think we could do worse than James Caprillion at 6K on this slate.
Absolutely. And like you just said, I'm biased with one of them, but I would take his last 4 matchups, those offenses against the Yankees.
Yes,
Easily. I would do that.
easily.
And I mean, look at it. Every start, I mean, the one he didn't because he had the 4 and runs, so we didn't get the quality start, but he gave us the 8 Ks against Toronto. But
Yep.
he's in quality start territory each of his last 4.
Yep.
If it weren't for 1 earned run and 2 less outs, he's right in the mix of things. And the pitch count, it's high. They're going to let him go into it. I actually really like Oakland in this one. We'll talk about some left-handed bats against the Yankee starter, but Caprillion at 6,000, and especially on a slate like this where it's like, good luck with some of the positions. Take a low-end SP2 like Caprillion, hope for the best with his floor, and then ride some big-name bats and more expensive bats to kind of fill out the lineup.
Yeah. Just for context, like if we did go Caprillion, John Gray, $4,200 is a pretty good springboard for the rest of your lineup. So, I think Caprillion makes a lot of sense here. You did mention the other side of this game, Clark Schmidt. I do have mild interest for someone who wasn't a fan of Clark Schmidt. I am a Yankees fan by day, and I wasn't in love with what Clark Schmidt was doing earlier in the year. I also like he has pitched better, but now he's not striking anybody out. He had a massive strikeout rate to begin the year. Now we're not getting strikeouts, so tough to really like get behind him. I do have mild interest because it is Oakland, but as we saw, if he's going to be, we saw Domingo Germán's ownership come in on Wednesday's slate. If Clark Schmidt's going to be the most popular arm on a 5-game slate, I'm perfectly fine with fading. Why don't we go into our infield breakdown here, Colby? What do you got for top infield plays on Thursday's early slate?
Well, I mean, there's a particular guy who, per DraftKings, noted first baseman.
Noted first baseman is accurate.
I'd love to see it. I would love to see it.
Accurate.
Shohei Ohtani, obviously, rinse and repeat with him. You don't really need to talk too much about him. But what I will say with the Angels lineup, Lance Lynn has a problem with left-handed hitters.
He
That's
does.
going to be a little bit of a theme that I know I'll be touching on a little bit here, but Otani's in a very good spot. Love some of the Rays bats. I'll kind of let you talk about those. And then one other guy in this Angels lineup, all I'm saying, I give the Angels a lot of crap for where he's hitting right now, but Mike Moustakas is 5 for 18 with 3 homers in his career against Lance Lynn, and he's looked half decent since joining the Angels here, hitting in the middle of the lineup. So Moustakas is going to be a guy that I think I may just be plugging him in on such a small slate. I will take any lefty bat against Lance Lynn that I can get.
John would be mad at me if I didn't do this. So you're telling me the Moose is on the loose?
Ooh. The other night it was steer runs like a deer. Now it's the Moose is on the loose.
That's John's. That's actually a John. The everything
Oh.
else that we can point to is usually me. Every corny
What an
phrase.
Impemba impression.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is a. That is. He asked me every single core slate that there was a righty before he was traded. If the Moose was going to be on the loose, and typically I said no. I usually was just like no. Mike Moustakas not, but he has, like you said, he's been good. Like he kind of has been. So I like it. And to your point, Colby, just to bring this to drive home your point, Lance Lynn against left-handed bats, 350 average, over 1,000 OPS allowed, 445 WOBA. Like dreadful numbers. Righties are not doing anything against him, but he throws a cutter that doesn't cut at 37 years old, and that would largely do it when it sits over the middle of the plate. So yeah.
Can I raise you a 5.79 ERA on the road too?
Yeah, I mean just we're going all in here against Lance Lynn. And again, like, yeah, this is a guy who did have 16 strikeouts in a game, and I'm happy for him because it wasn't on the main slate. And I would have lost money that day probably because I would have stacked against him. Or maybe I wouldn't have because Seattle only has like 2 lefties on their whole roster. But he really just has struggled mightily against lefties, and this is going to be no different when the best player in the game is opposing you. For my infield options, I think there's a lot of really good ones, a few of them on the same team, a few of them not. I really will just gravitate towards the shortstop position, Corey Seager. And I like Olsen on Detroit, but I like Corey Seager more. He has 31 extra base hits in 48 games played this year. He has an RBI per game this year. I mean, again, like he's probably a Shohei Ohtani away from being in the lead of the AL MVP race, despite playing or spending time in the IL. And if Ohtani doesn't exist, Corey Seager probably the front runner there. So I like him. I love Wander Franco, especially against left-handed pitching. That the right-handed side of this has always been his better split. And Tommy Henry has been better of late, and I'll grant him that. But Wander Franco just notoriously very, very solid against left-handed pitching. Also, in the infield, I like Ketel Marte, who I asked you, are we getting like 2021 Ketel Marte back? Because the power has been kind of ridiculous of late. Like it went from random 30 home run season to no power at all, back to on the way to another 30 home run season, home runs in 4 of 5 and 5 of 7 games overall, hitting atop, one of the best lineups in baseball right now. 5,400 going up against Yanni Chirinos, who does not miss any bats. Everything is pitch to contact for him. And then Isaac Paredes, just noted lefty masher. Just like, I mean, everyone on Tampa, they're the number 1 team against left-handed pitching in baseball. Isaac Paredes, no different. Where can I find him? 4,400. And he's been really good of late. And I'm actually surprised that he's hitting so well without like there being power involved, because I feel like everything Isaac Paredes does is power. That random stretch last year where he had that 3 home run game followed by like a 2 home run game. And then he had a couple like home runs after that. You're like, oh, this guy put himself on the map. So those are my top infielder plays. And I'll give a little shout to Andrew Vaughn as well. He is one of the few, I'm just kidding. He is one of the few White Sox that do hit left-handed pitching relatively well. on the year, 206 ISO against lefties, 343 WOBA. So I'll give a little shout to Andrew Vaughn. I still think he's a little too cheap for the matchup.
Can you where is Ezekiel Duran priced at?
They have
Take a
officially
look.
moved him to outfield only as well. So
Okay.
$3,400 Ezekiel Duran. But that's a good transition. If you wanted to go to outfield, we could just go right to outfield and talk about Ezekiel Duran because again, he is 3,400, still too cheap. I wish he had multi. FanDuel, he has three positions. He has second base, shortstop, and outfield eligibility, which I mean, that's just FanDuel in a nutshell, just giving anybody any eligibility ever. But dude, like if he's not on Texas, like he's actually hitting at the top of most lineups right now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this guy has been amazing.
Yep. And I mean, he started off like I remember a couple weeks ago doing the value plays article and was like, he's the lefty guy, like him against lefties, throw him in any Texas stack. But when you look here in the month of June, looking at his numbers, 19 games against righties, you look at his numbers, we're talking 7 extra base hits, 2 of them are homers, 9 runs, 5 RBIs, a 358 batting average. And then we follow that up with a 959 OPS. In that same stretch, Corey Seager's also up at almost 1,200. So that kind of goes to your play there. But Duran's a really nice value tonight too. Reese Olson does have some swing and miss stuff. So if Reese Olson was literally facing any offense on the slate other than Texas, I would have a ton of interest in him as our second starter. But
Yep.
that's baseball. That's what they say. So Ezekiel Duran's a very good value in the outfield. I hope you agree with me on this one. But my absolute favorite, since there is a lefty on the mound, if you're not going Patrick Sandoval, it's got to be Luis Robert. This guy you want to talk about lefty mashers.
Yes.
That is him through and through. And ever since he didn't run out that ground ball or whatever stupid reason that he got benched for, but he's been much better of late. 367 average on the year. He's got 6 home runs and 60 at bats against lefties. So 1 every 10 at bats. That's a very good metric. And if you like OPS against lefty this year, over 1,200. Luis Roberts, the top outfielder play outside of Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, and just to sprinkle a little more on top of that for you, Colby, 400 ISO against left-handed pitching. You mentioned the home run, so that obviously plays, but 400 ISO is absolutely ridiculous. So let's look up what do we got for Sandoval here. Obviously, going to be worse against righties. He's been just equally pretty bad against both sides of the split here. So I'm in love with Luis Robert against a lefty pretty much every single time there is a lefty I get to him. Same thing can kind of be said when I see Randy Arozarena against a lefty. You can get there. Same thing kind of said when I see Adolis Garcia against a righty. Adolis Garcia has been better against the both-handednesses, but he has been really, really, really good throughout his whole career against righties. 15 home runs already this year against right-handed pitching, 347 WOBA to pair with it. So I love Adolis Garcia. He's one of my favorite plays of the slate, right next to Randy Arozarena in the outfield. Anyone else you have like a lot of interest in out here in the outfield, whether it be spend up or whether it be value tier?
Yeah, and I mean, going back to Adolis Garcia, 19 of his 27 homers last year were against a righty.
It's been a thing for a couple years that he's just been. There's just some guys that just see the same headedness better, and Adolis Garcia has definitely been one of those guys.
Yeah, but in terms of value, I know we talked about it for the Wednesday slate a little bit. Clark Schmidt is not good against lefties.
No.
That is his, what is it, kryptonite, I guess as they say, is kryptonite. And against lefties, 313 average, 394 OBP, 514 slug. Lefties are getting to him a little bit. And when you look, he's had a home run problem at home, not on the road, but his ERA up over 5 on the road this season. So I don't know, maybe a Ryan Noda, maybe a Seth Brown. There's some pretty interesting value in the outfield. And this slate is so small that like a mini Oakland stack, like when we talked about on the Wednesday slate, when you got 13 games, it's hard to feel confident rolling out a mini Oakland stack.
Yes.
On a 5-game slate, I think anything goes.
Yeah, I agree. And if you even wanted to like pair Story Ruiz, who at this point, again, is just minus odds to steal a base pretty much every game, like you get a Ruiz on and then a Seth Brown home run at like following a Ruiz stolen base, like you're cooking with gas on a 5-game slate. So I know Ruiz isn't a lefty, and that doesn't fit the like Clark Schmidt mold because he has been terrible against lefties. I do agree though. Oakland is very interesting. Same thing can be said about Tampa. They have a lot of really good value in the outfield if you just take a look at some of these prices. Harold Ramirez, I know he's been bad, but $3,800, he's hit lefties well specifically. Same thing with Jose Siri. I don't know if we're going to get a bat flip against Tommy Henry, but we could definitely get a home run against Tommy Henry because Jose Siri hits home runs against righties. He hits home runs against lefties. The guy just hits home runs. 299, that was against righties. 349 ISO against left-handed pitching this year for Jose Siri. So if he cracks the lineup, like I obviously have no issues there. Just looking at things, Manny Margot, 326 WOBA against left-handed pitching this year. Harold Ramirez, 450 WOBA. Just backtrack to Ramirez. So I like all of this cheap Tampa outfield. And Margot, 350 average with a 930 OPS over his last 10 games. And he's always been somebody that has seen lefties better than he has righties. And, you have Wander at 50, whatever. You have a Rosarena at $6,000. If you wanted to play Yandy Diaz and all of his power, he's $5,300. So getting a cheap Margot who's going to hit likely in the middle of that lineup, 2,700 could be a pretty decent approach. Colby, it is time to go through the Grande's gems and Colby's cornerstones. So why don't we start at the corner store? Colby's Conway cornerstone at the corner store. I tried some alliteration. It didn't work, but we'll just go with it and just go with your cornerstones not at the corner store.
Yep. For me, the home run call is going to be Luis Robert. Lefty masher. Give me him hitting a home run in this one. Top stack. I think we only mentioned about 12 of the potential 9 starters for them.
So.
But the Tampa Bay Rays,
I think so.
Easily the top stack of the night, I think, for me. Contrarian stack, let's go at Zach Greinke. I know the other night when we went Cleveland Guardians bats, it didn't quite work out, but I still like lefties against Greinke. So there's a contrarian stack for you. Star of the night, the only pitcher I feel super, super, super confident in playing is John Gray going up against Detroit. And then my value play of the night, the Moose is loose, baby, Mike Moustakas.
I hope John on his cruise abroad is watching and hears this podcast.
I hope he's not watching.
Well, yes, that is also true. Well, I mean, sometimes when you're cruising, like, what else are you going to be doing? Like, if you're sleeping, maybe he's just laying down. We know John is he's definitely been way too involved, like, behind the scenes this whole time. He's probably been half the comments on our live stream anyway. For me, Adolis Garcia is going to be my home run call, and I'm going to parlay that with my top stack as the Texas Rangers. I'm actually going to go a little against you here in your Patrick Sandoval call. I'm going to go with the White Sox as my contrarian stack. I do think they do have a few power bats against lefties. One, Jake Berger, you may have forgotten, has a over 300 ISO against left-handed pitching on the year. So I do think they could do some damage. Eli Jimenez, just 4K on DraftKings, is a very good price. Star of the night, I'm just going to stick with Texas and the guy who I think is going to go yard. And we've seen hit 3 home runs in a game this year and have a 5-hit game as well, Adolis Garcia. And my value play, I'm just going to go right back to the White Sox. Andrew Vaughn, $3,100 over at first base. I really, really like that price. And if you look at the history of Andrew Vaughn's career, it's been lefties that he has gotten to the most. So mostly for me, White Sox and Rangers in that mix. And you had a much wider variety in your corner store, which I bet more people will probably shop at than mine.
What corner store doesn't have variety?
I know. Well, mine. Look at mine. Mine's just 2 teams. People are just picking between Coke and Pepsi. Like you had Dr. Pepper, you had like Mountain Dew, like you had like all the good flavors. I just a little disappointed in myself, but here we are. Time to build a lineup, Colby. And I think feel like we're just gonna go here with John Gray as our SB1. I guess the question is, what did we want to do with SB2? Because like Sandoval is fine. I think pretty much everyone has risk on this slate. John Gray is obviously the safest option we have. What do you want to do? How risk averse are you, or do you want to be here? Because truthfully, I want to play Caprillion, would be the direction I'd like to go. But I'm going to open the floor to you if you want to pitch Sandoval or anyone else.
No, because I think if looking how it's going to go with the hitting and like some value that we found with like Oakland lefties and one of 6 Tampa Bay guys, I think we're going to have enough. I would really like to try to get Luis Robert in there. So I'm
Okay.
okay. I'm okay not going Sandoval. I like Caprillion. Like I said, of all these other guys, like I've talked myself into a mini Oakland stack, which was my second choice for a contrarian stack of the slate. If Reese Olson was facing any other team other than Texas and John Gray, I would love to put him in there. But yeah, I say we save the money, go James Caprillion. It's a good matchup.
Okay, let's ride. And you know what? I'll plug Luis Robert, and I also want to plug Adolis. I know that's going to take up 2 of our outfield spots, but
We're
I
fine.
think we still have nearly $4,000 to spend. So why don't we take a look at catcher? Not a position that either of us mentioned a single name at.
Well,
I
we're
mean,
paying down, so I'm
we're
confident in that.
yeah. I mean, Bethencourt is good against lefties. He's probably going to be in the lineup. Grandal is going to probably be in the lineup. We're probably going to get Wallach. Actually, or we're probably going to get Tice. Probably plug and play here, Matt Tice.
I would say so because if you have the money, we go Angels against Lance Lynn with Tice, the Moose is loose,
Ooh,
and Otani.
ooh, we're onto something here. We're cooking. Oh, I literally that was literally what I was going to type. By the way, I was just going to type Moose.
No,
That's
this isn't
not his
MLB The
name.
Show. This isn't
I
MLB The
know.
Show 23 where they give
Oh
player
boy.
nicknames on there, like
Oh boy.
watching some streamers where it's like the Commerce Comet and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here
Oh
for a
boy.
week like, who the heck is this? And then it all checks and everything like that. But no, this isn't MLB The Show. We do
Oh
first and
boy.
last names here, James,
Yeah, we do. We sure
and
do.
sometimes middle initials. You never know.
Logan. Well, some middle initials disappear out of thin air too. What do we want to do? What do we want to do? Because we kind of have a dilemma here. We
No,
have
we
to
don't.
decide: is it Otani? Is that what we're doing?
I say we start there and see if we can make it work.
Okay. Okay. Second base. We have $3,400 remaining.
Pretty
This
bad.
position sucks, and now there is a
Jordan
lefty.
Westberg. Jordan Westberg.
I wish he was available. I
I
really
know.
do. That would be
I know.
so nice here. Tony Kemp has been pretty good of late. If we wanted to go there, um, obviously not like the best, but it is a lefty that we get. We could also just move on and start somewhere else and look for like anybody else with a pulse at third. Oof. Running out of
What about Michael Garcia from Kansas City?
yes, I like Miguel Garcia.
That doesn't. Oh, he's third only. Shoot.
Yeah, unfortunately, we only have. Let's
Oof.
we'll move off Adolis, and we will
Well,
get
we
one of
can.
the cheap. Well, let's get one of the cheap Rays in,
Okay.
so we can build off. Because I think we're gonna probably want something up here. I don't know if we puts us pretty much in the same position as we just were. What do we got here? We got Tim Anderson has second base eligibility. That's interesting. We got about a minute left, Colby. What do we got here?
Yeah. Go. Let's.
Rengifo.
Go. Can we do Tim?
We could do Tim. And then we got 3,500 for a third baseman.
Oh.
Escobar. Oh, Escobar. He's on the team. He's on the Angels. Lefty.
Yeah.
He's kind of
Could,
stinks.
we could look at him, or if we have the 400. I saw Andres Jimenez there. Could we look at him against Greinke? Get a Cleveland
Yes. Yes.
bat in? Do we have
Yes,
time
we
to do
can.
this?
Yeah. 3,100, Michael Garcia.
Yep.
All right. That will do it. John Gray, James Caprillion, Matt Tice, Mike Moustakas, Andres Jimenez, Mikel Garcia, Wander Franco, Luis Robert, Manny Margot, Shohei Otani. That's the lineup. Colby and I will be back with the main slate at 5 p.m. Eastern.